One of the giveaways that MIDI-based strings are not real is when the volume and tone stay the same throughout every note. Real string players often use the strength of their bowing to change the volume and tone of their playing throughout a performance, and most string libraries have different levels of dynamics mapped to a single controller, often called expression, which is usually MIDI control change number 11. In case you aren't aware, a MIDI control change is a number that is usually assigned to a specific parameter so that if you decide to use a different instrument, the MIDI controller will do the same thing. A good example is the modulation controller, which is usually mapped as CC number 1, or the sustain controller, which is usually mapped to number 64 by default. Fortunately, most virtual instruments also conveniently let you map any physical controller to the instrument, such as mapping the modulation wheel to expression or whatever parameter you want. Here's a short piece which has a piano part and is arranged for cello, violin, viola, ensemble, as well as a solo cello. I'll play it for you and notice that while the part is arranged decently, it doesn't have so many dynamics. The parts are not very dynamic and some of them come in a bit abruptly, so I'm going to use expression to create some volume swells and dynamics. In the case of this specific virtual instrument, the dynamics knob will actually give me the most tonal variation between the quiet and loud parts, so that's what I'll use. Otherwise, many instruments also have an expression slider or knob, and if you're using a very basic virtual instrument that doesn't have this, you can at the very least map a volume slider for that instrument, though I would suggest using a secondary reverb plugin and disabling any internal effects so that when you drop the volume down, the reverb doesn't also go away. It sounds a lot more natural that way. So the dynamics are assigned to the modulation wheel, so I'll just use that. But if you do need to map something different, such as a breath controller or a pedal, you can always right-click on the parameter like this and use the MIDI Learn feature and move the physical controller and it will be assigned. Okay, let's do the cello first. I'll be doing some swells throughout, and if I make any mistakes, I can always do it over or just record again and start moving the fader at any point. I just need to make sure to record enable the cello part, and when I adjust the modulation wheel, it will now adjust the dynamics. I've also just soloed the piano and cello parts, so I only hear those. Okay, great. I did that in one pass. Now for the viola part. I'll keep the cello part going now that I got that right. Okay, I can work with that. And now for the violin part. I'm going to swell in the high note in the beginning just so it's not so jarring. I did play the note early, by the way, just so I could fade it in. Otherwise, if the note wasn't playing, I wouldn't be able to add any expression to a note that hadn't played yet. So for the solo cello part, I'm using the Embertone Blakes solo cello. First, I'm going to do the vibrato with the modulation wheel, and then I'm going to go back and do the expression with a fader. I'm actually going to go in and edit that first one because I want more vibrato on that. So let's see how this sounds. Much better. And now for the expression lane. I like it, but I'm going to make a couple edits to the expression and the vibrato. So after a couple more little volume changes, this is what I'm left with. So now that I've added the dynamics, I could also go back and do an automation pass on the vibrato amount in the different ensemble instruments as well. To do that, I just select the instrument and I can actually just right click here, learn MIDI automation, adjust a fader, and it's automatically assigned. I'll just do a quick one on the cello so you can hear it. So in conclusion, any parameter within a virtual instrument can be assigned to a fader or knob and automated, and these sorts of details can help make your string arrangement sound much more realistic as long as you're willing to take the time and perfect your parts this way. Please stay tuned for our next video.